Good evening, I'm Vikram Oza and you're watching The Big Question here on NDTV Profit. After that 5-year hiatus, India-China direct flights, they're finally back in the air. Indigo's flight from Kolkata to Guangzhou has taken off this weekend, the first since the year 2020. What does it signal? A possible thaw between two of Asia's biggest economies? Yes, more connections are on the way. Daily services between Kolkata and Guangzhou. There's Delhi-Guangzhou flight from the 10th of November. And Air India is set to join the route by the end of the year. So on the face of it, this is a big boost for business and tourism. Remember, before the pandemic, nearly 8 lakh passengers were flying between India and China every year. But behind this kind of new connectivity, there is a more complex picture, one of lingering border disputes, widening trade deficits, and there are new flashpoints as well over rare earths and tech exports. So tonight we're asking this question: India-China flights are resuming, but do these travel links mask these strategic tensions, these strains in the relationship? Are they masking them, or are we expecting a genuine thaw? We're looking at whether this renewed engagement can truly rebuild trust, or if it's just an attempt to keep channels open while these tensions simmer beneath the surface. First, look at what passengers, the ones who traveled from Kolkata to Guangzhou, what they were saying about the resumption of flights.
It was definitely very convenient because it was a direct flight, so it was much more relaxing that we could just directly come down here without a layover in between. So yes, we are looking forward to many more such opportunities.
So there have been many other options previously, like from Delhi Guangzhou there was a direct flight. China Southern used to fly. It's easier for both the countries, India and China, that this flight has resumed because the trade will even get better from now.
It is very good because before we came with China Southern direct from New Delhi to Guangzhou. So direct flight was not there, so it's a bit of hassle. But now they are starting again. It is very good, very, very good.
Well, there you have it. There is the resumption of flights between India and China, and that's happening after a span of 5 years. But what does it really mean? Let's discuss this with an excellent panel that's joining us tonight on The Big Question. Let me introduce our guests who are here with us this evening. First up, of course, we do have Meera Shankar, former Indian ambassador to the United States. She's joining us in a moment. Also, Dr. Shrikant Kondapalli is here, professor of Chinese studies at JNU. And Subhash Goel, chairman of the STIC Travel Group. And along with them, we have Jyoti Gupta, the research analyst at Nirmal Bang. So all of you guests, thank you for making the time and joining us on The Big Question. Let me ask first, in terms of what we are expecting, how, Jyoti Gupta, you see the markets and trade perspective. Do you see the resumption of flights as this genuine thaw in the relationship? How are the markets viewing what is actually happening by way of resumption of flights between the two countries? Because yes, there is euphoria around it, but how's the market sensing the trade imbalance between the two countries and what could happen by way of the kind of, we have these tensions on tech exports as well. So Jyoti Gupta, why don't you tell us first?
Thank you so much for having me on the show. So I think a geostrategic signaling is not a substitution for military posture. I mean, flights are a diplomatic olive branch, but do not mean that the border standoff is resolved. So defense procurement, readiness, and infrastructure modernization will continue, to be shaped by perceived threats, not by resumed commercial flights, alone. So, I mean, there are short-term benefits wherein, there will be commercial supply chain for electronic components, machine tools, industrial inputs that defense firms sometimes rely on indirectly. So that actually lower the lead times and cost for dual-use items. But at the same time, there's a renewed commercial flows may re-expose firms to reliance on Chinese parts subsystems, some dual systems, unless procurement rules are and vetting are tightened. So, not all is, positive.
Not all positives. Meera Shankar, you've understood how diplomacy works when it comes to India and China. Yes, we've had tensions because of the tariffs that have been imposed by the US, and that has its own bearing in how India is now seeing that much more proximity with China. So the timing of this is important as well. How do you see it in terms of diplomacy now, and how resumptions of flights have taken place now after a span of 5 years after those tensions at the border?
I think India has said that on the border points where friction occurred between India and China, the process of disengagement has been completed. That is the Indian government's position. But the whole process of de-escalation still remains to be undertaken because you have your troops in eyeball to eyeball confrontation, 50,000 of them, and you have military infrastructure which has been built, which obviously makes the border situation not stable. You know, it is one which is a cause of concern, and India has stressed this to China, including Prime Minister Modi when he met him on the sidelines of the SCO meeting. So I think that's important. But what both countries have embarked upon is a step-by-step process where each step as it's implemented helps to build confidence to move to the next level. So the resumption of flights, I think, was one of the first steps towards more normalization of relations, because as a result of the border friction, India had taken the view that relations cannot continue as usual till such time as these friction points.
So there is a reset. Yes, there is a reset and there is a step-by-step approach. Dr. Kondapalli, what is the current temperature that you sense between India and China right now in our relations? Now with the resumption of flights, do you see it as a step-by-step approach, or is this like at this stage we want to be able to move in a possible direction, and that seems to be a positive step, but the lingering tensions, those remain unresolved. At this stage, are we okay with that? How do you see the current temperature between the two countries?
Well, last October 21st, we decided to have disengagement, patrolling, and grazing on the borders after the 2020 June 15 incident in Galwan, where 20 Indian soldiers were killed and 4 estimated Chinese soldiers were killed. So since then, we have had a series of meetings. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval went to China in December, followed by Vikram Misri, the Foreign Secretary, and then by Dr. Jaishankar and Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh, and Foreign Minister Wang Yi came to Delhi in August. So these are step-by-step measures. But what has been the main contention is Dr. Jaishankar mentioned on 2 days after the Galwan clashes that peace and tranquility is essential for the improvement in bilateral relations. So that's the context. So in terms of the direct flights, it is actually related to the pandemic when China shut down every other flight, not just Indian, but also others, till about December 2023. So as a result of this pandemic, of course, there is the Galwan crisis also affected the decision to stop the direct flights. But there is currently the problem related to airport slots, route licensing, bilateral service agreements. Those have to be renewed, and this has been renewed yesterday. Still there are some lingering problems on the slots and licensing arrangements and so on. So this is more of a tactical issue that is being sorted out right now. But on your question on whether this is going to be a continuous step
is
by
it
step,
sustainable?
we do
is it
not
sustainable?
know. We do not know, because if tomorrow there is another border clash, all of these will be shut down again. But we also have to be realistic that out of a total 30 million flights globally, there are just about 2,800 flights between China and India.
Correct.
So we also, between the last 20-25 years or so. So it means that the average footfall between India and China in terms of the flights is actually very low. Just about 7 flights a week before the Galwan or the pandemic. So we have to be realistic on this front.
Right. So you think this may not be enough? Yes, optic-wise, it's a good move. It's a step-by-step increase in trying to resume the kind of ties that we had pre-Galwan. But now, Subhash Goel, when you see this from a business and tourism standpoint, tell me how significant do you see this development of resumption of flights? Is this air connectivity going to help thaw relations on the ground? Because, yes, trade, business is all very important. But on the ground, how important do you see this leading its way to more trade, more business?
See, already there is a $1 billion bilateral trade between India and China. And as far as tourism is concerned, before the flights closed in 2019, we had about 360,000 odd Chinese tourists coming to India. Although China is the largest outbound tourism country in the world, so there is a huge potential from China to India. And as Palmerston has said, that in politics, there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies, there are only permanent interests. So it is in the national interest both of India and China that we are two Asian powers, that we maybe step by step, but we start building our relationships, because in view of the tariffs which have been imposed by the United States, I think South-South cooperation is very important, and we have to look at the Asian and African and Middle East and European markets. And that is why I think it is in the national interest of China as well as India to soften the relationship. And travel and tourism is one aspect. It's the first step towards normalization of relationship. And I'm sure that there is no problem in the world which cannot be solved by negotiations. And I am always an optimistic person, and I believe that if Europe, Germany was divided into East and West Germany, and finally there is a European common market now, and there is a common currency euro, and there is a common visa Shenzhen. So I think as the global, whole situation is changing,
right?
I think we need to think in terms of larger cooperation,
yes,
in the Asian market, starting from Asia Pacific.
Mr. Goel brings up a very important point, Meera Shankar. In a multipolar world, you're seeing China move towards probably a softer image for itself. And
Yes.
that's an important lesson for maybe India as well. You tell us, in terms of the positioning that China is going for post-pandemic, also after the kind of tariffs that have been imposed by the Trump regime, do you think China is being pressed by the need to soften its global image and perhaps create a balance of power that is more skewed towards a Chinese leadership? Or do you think this is more about their business concerns as well, because their economy has taken a beating in recent times, so they do need to open it up for business and trade?
Well, I think China has huge overcapacities economically, and their economy has been slow. Post-pandemic, it has not recovered to the growth levels that it had in the past, and it's not expected to either, because it's a much bigger economy today. So growth levels are expected to moderate in the coming decades. So I would say both. China is doing it both in terms of giving itself more space,
Right.
in the light of its competition with the US, but also because its economy dictates that it needs markets, because it has huge overcapacities,
Right.
which its domestic market can't absorb.
Right.
But as far as India is concerned, there are two issues as we look at economic engagement with China, looking beyond the border issue. As of now, the meeting, say, for instance, between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi on the sidelines of the SCO, President Xi basically said that, the salience of the border issue has to be given its right priority and should not really overshadow everything else.
Does it move side by side?
China's
Yes.
traditional position on the boundary.
Correct.
So I think the jury is still out. We have to trust but verify.
Trust but verify.
Which is why
Can we do that with China?
Yes, a step-by-step approach.
Correct.
Which means that we have to go by, let me finish.
Yes.
We have to go by what China does in terms of its actual behavior towards us,
right?
Rather than by our own wish fulfillment,
right,
or inclination.
Fair
to,
yes,
suddenly say, we need China and therefore we are going to embrace them.
Right.
The second issue is that you have a huge trade deficit with China.
Correct.
Your total trade was $118 billion, not $1 billion, as your previous panelist said. And out of this, $16 billion are your exports. The rest are Chinese exports to you. So a trade deficit of almost $100 billion.
Right.
Now, that is eviscerating much of your small and medium industry. The second is, till you have a border settlement with China, you are really not in a position to open up strategic sectors to them, so you would have to continue to be careful.
Correct.
So within these caveats, that you have to look at how the interaction with China hits your economy.
Correct.
Yes, in many sectors, they supply you intermediate goods, which go into making the finished goods which you need. But they have also put the squeeze on strategic exports, including critical minerals, rare earth magnets,
and tech
at
exports.
One stage,
and tech exports, Ambassador.
Tunneling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, tunneling machines.
Tunneling machines are an important piece. So how much of that agenda can be pushed? Jyoti Gupta, why don't you weigh in on this? The kind of sectors that Ambassador Meera Shankar is pointing out, there is an opportunity for India, if we are going to open up our ties, make ourselves that much more accessible to the Chinese markets, then in return, are there opportunities that India is likely to pursue, something that the markets are looking forward to, that where you see a pickup, whether it's pharmaceuticals, rare earths, minerals, all of these are open?
So my sense is, I think it's a question which needs to be answered after calibrated thought, and a lot of work has to be done before it can be commented. Second is, at least on the defense front, I definitely do not see the doors opening very soon, because every, we have to have readiness and, LSE certification measures separate from the civil normalization. Now, while rare earth is something which India does need for defense, but I think there is a long way to go. And I don't see, at least on a strategic front, defense components, specifically rare earth materials, would be, there will be a movement of such materials anytime in the next 12 to 15 months. So
yes,
difficult to actually comment specifically on the defense side.
Well, difficult to assess at this stage, since we are only now talking about a step-by-step recalibration of ties. And the first step is the resumption of ties. But Dr. Kondapalli, these direct flights are back. But when it comes to border patrolling, when it talk about India's strategic interest, in terms of what caution New Delhi needs to push, that kind of agenda with China, caution on one side and its own trade interests on the other side, what do you think India's approach should be now that we've got the resumption of flights going?
Vikram, I think some basics are essential here. In the last 20 years or so, we had about 2 million Chinese coming to India using these direct flights, and over 3 million Indians visited China. Most of the Chinese who came to India are Buddhist tourists, 80% of them. and the rest is 20% for trade and other purposes. In the case of Indian tourists, mainly they are for tourism purposes as well as for trade and business purposes. Canton Fair is the major attraction, and so they go to Guangzhou, where Canton Fair is operated. Now, the basic thing here is before the pandemic, 180 million Chinese visited abroad as tourists. But China weaponizes the flow of these tourists. For example, when South Korea deployed the THAAD system, the Chinese stopped going to Jeju Islands, which receives about 93% of Chinese tourists. Direct flights are important for this purpose. Likewise, in Malaysian Airlines, which crashed, China also retaliated. Again, related to Taiwan, when they elected a DPP president,
Yes.
the Chinese have shut down the tourists. So basically, the Communist Party controls the tourist operators, and it sends signals to these tourist operators whether to go to a particular destination or not. So India first has to be very cautious about this line and see what can be done in terms of these flights, direct flights between China and India.
So even the first...
this is number one.
Yes, but even this first step, and I'm running out of time, so I want to take this across to Subhash Goel as well. Since we're talking about resumption of flights, and step by step, Dr. Kondapalli is saying that even when it comes to resumption of business links, the way China plays that, do we need to be aware of the sensitivities involved, even if business is to pick up? Trade, if it has to pick up between the two countries, do you think business travel can rise at the level that perhaps someone in the travel industry would hope for, or do we need to play on the side of caution? Subhash Goel.
No, as far as business travel is concerned, today the business people are still traveling to China via Hong Kong or via Kuala Lumpur or via Thailand, and they are definitely traveling all over, China. But yes, actually it is not just in India's interest, but it is in China's interest also. In fact, China has been requesting India for resumption of flights for a long time. And finally, I think India has agreed. In view of the geopolitical situation, I think it is in the interest of both the countries to come closer to each other, and it is in their interest to, resolve all pending matters so that trade and tourism can flourish.
Can flourish, yes, indeed. So this resumption of flights, yes, new movement after years of frost, but whether it leads to trust or is it going to lead to turbulence, that is going to depend on what happens beyond the runway, like Ambassador Meera Shankar pointed out. And flights can reopen routes, but rebuilding that confidence is going to take more than just air connectivity. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Dr. Kondapalli, Mr. Subhash Goel. Thank you for joining us, Jyoti Gupta. It's a pleasure having you with us on this edition of The Big Question. And there you have it. Of course, there will be more opportunities for India to draw deeper ties with China. There is a need on both sides at this point when the tariff pressures from the Trump administration are on. And that's when we've seen the entire resumption of flights take off. But what is this going to lead to? How does India need to play its cards right with China this time around? That's going to be the big question. I'm Vikram Oza from me and the entire team. Thanks for joining us on NDTV Profit.